We're going to go ahead and get started. It's 6:30. I have a couple quick announcements, and then I'll be introducing our speaker today. One announcement. Just what you may have already received an email about this, but our own Dr. Wood is going to be presenting tomorrow as the 2026 University Faculty Lecture at the Hub. He's going to be talking about a breath of fresh air, science and policy of saving lives from America's deadliest cancer. This is a nominated annual award. So please attend if you can. It's 5:30 to 7:30 at the Hub. Can you hear me? Okay. Oh, okay. And then also this month we have 2 grand round sessions. This is our normal session, and then we have a combined anesthesia session next Wednesday. Same time, but it's at the Education Center, the Health Sciences Education Center, and you'll get email details to that. We'll have Dr. Thomas Weiser come and talk. He is a general emergency and trauma surgeon, also a surgical intensivist, and focuses on surgery in resource poor settings. There's also been an email sent out about meeting with him at Stoop Brewery, Capitol Hill from 6 to 9 next Tuesday. You could look at your email for details. And then also today is Billy's last day. Billy's the one who's been coming up here. If everything's working from an AV standpoint, if everything's running smoothly, that's because Billy's there making sure that Grand Rounds is running as it should for everyone. So thank you, Billy, for all your work. We're going to miss you. And then also, so finally, to introduce our speaker today, this month is for the Women's Council and led by Dr. Chris Calhoun, who cannot be here today because she's at Pat Coast. But she did send me her intro that she would like to give. So I will go ahead and read Dr. Calhoun's intro. She writes, I am so sorry I could not be there in person to introduce you to the 2026 UW Department of Surgery Women Council Grand Rounds invited speaker, Dr. Sara Kim. I first met Dr. Kim several years ago when she was faculty for the Teaching Scholars Program. I was fortunate to work with her when she became a research professor in the Department of Surgery and the inaugural holder of the George G.B. Bilton's Professorship in the Art of Communication with Peers and Patients. As clerkship director, our paths continued to cross when she served as associate dean for educational quality improvement within the School of Medicine, a job she held until we were fortunate to recruit her back full-time to serve as our first executive and professional development coach in the Department of Surgery. Dr. Kim has extensive training and experience as a coach, and in her position leads research and training in conflict management and leadership development across UW Medicine. Since 2014, Dr. Kim has trained more than 20,000 healthcare professionals nationwide in communication skills that support patient safety, quality of care, and effective leadership. Her collaborative work has been published in medical specialty and health professions education journals, and she was also the distinguished alumna for Scripps College in 2023. We are so fortunate to have Dr. Kim within our department and are so grateful to her for being our invited lecturer today. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Sara Kim.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for that intro, and thank you to Dr. Calhoun, who invited me to give today's Grand Rounds talk. So I titled it, Take 2, Everyday Skills for Navigating Conflict. I have 3 goals for today. One, I'm going to take about 10 minutes and provide an update on how the coaching program in the department has been going. Then I will transition to this Take 2 framework. And the key part of today's talk is many voices I was able to bring to this talk from across multiple colleagues in the department who had been very generous in giving me the permission to use their voice. Before I start, I would like to give a quick tribute to Dr. Bilston, who established this endowed professorship in the art of communication with peers and patients. This professorship has been in the department, I think, since 2009, after he passed away. So he was a neurologist in Atlanta, and he was born in Munich, grew up in many parts, many countries in Europe, before coming to Seattle at the age of 12. He got his MD degree from our medical school in 1955 and passed away in Atlanta. Unfortunately, he had no next of kin living on this soil, so I never met him. And I hope that he's proud of all the work that my colleagues and I have done as part of this professorship over the past 13 years. So just a quick remark on the coaching program. There are three components, and I should start by thanking Dr. Wood and Susan Marks, the vice chair for finance and administration, for having this foresight. Turns out it's one of the few best practices in the country that we know of. So the program has three components, including one-on-one coaching. So I'll show you the website where you can make an appointment. You can grab a 30-minute spot coaching or 60-minute longitudinal coaching. I also offer team coaching. It looks like the general surgery administrative team is going to launch team coaching. And the goal is to promote cohesiveness in the team and to help people cultivate a mindset as peer coaches. So I look forward to partnering with them. The second component is training. We're not trying to do one-off training, but implement a series of longitudinal training, and I have some examples to share with you. And the long-term outcome is to promote and sustain the respectful and collaborative culture in the department. So as I do training and coaching, I'm constantly looking for potential collaborative initiatives for promoting our positive culture. Just a few slides on numbers. So I started part-time May last year and then transitioned to full-time in June. Since then, 341 sessions had been offered. And as you can see, the majority of the individuals they took advantage of the 60-minute coaching. There are 73 individuals total who either completed coaching or continue to be coached. And you can see the breakdown by their role, faculty, leaders. So these would be leaders with chief titles, and then residents, APP leads, and staff members. This is showing the 73 clients by the breakdown by session frequency. Some people, they may just meet one time and it solved their problem, or they have enough of strategy to move forward. The majority of the individuals will meet two to four or five. There are a sizable number of people who have been meeting me more than 10 times and will be meeting on an ongoing basis. Just a note on what coaching is and is not. So coaching is not to give advice. I do not judge you. I don't judge what you say, what you disclose, sometimes what you confess. I don't cross-fertilize information I hear from one corner of the department into the coaching space and vice versa. My job is to listen, and I observe. I observe everything in the room. The vocal pitch, tone, pace, body language, narrative. Sometimes a client will ask me, what should I do? Should I choose option A or B? And so because I am not to give advice, what I'll say is, I notice a lot of energy in you and enthusiasm when you talk about option B. That's what I'll offer you. So at every point, my job is to empower the client and honor their agency. I am certified through the International Coaching Federation, so I adhere to their ethical principle when it comes to confidentiality. So who receives coaching from me and what is specifically discussed is not disclosed anywhere. Now, the clients themselves can disclose that they're receiving coaching. I'm going to, in this slide, just list some of the common coaching topics brought forward by residents and faculty members at various professional ranks. And I will not read them, but if you scan through, maybe many of these topics may resonate with you. You may have your own unique topics given where you are in the station of your lives. And so some of these common coaching topics are helping us identify and prioritize what should be some of the departmental priorities. And let me cover that. Really excited to share with you some of the 2026 initiatives, beginning with training. As I mentioned, we're moving away from one-time training to offering longitudinal training. So do we have any R3s in the room? Any R3? One, we met on the stage. Yes. So the R3, they're all participating in a 6-month monthly leadership and communication skills training. And we launched this 2 weeks ago. I want to publicly acknowledge Dr. Friedrich, Dr. Peterson, Dr. Edinger, Dr. Burfield, Dr. Kiriga, without whom this series wouldn't have become a reality. And all the R3s, they were just awesome in terms of the insight they brought, candor, and most importantly, the way they supported each other. Wouldn't you agree? Thank you. Last Wednesday, the Peds General and Thoracic Surgery Division launched a year-long Crucial Conversations training series. And I want to thank Dr. Stephen Lee, the division chief, as well as the entire division faculty members. They earnestly participated and brought a lot of great insight and recommendations for the future. So this is a recent decision, but the department will be piloting a 360 leadership evaluation. So for those of you who might have gone through this, people in my sphere of leadership, maybe 25 to 30 individuals will provide evaluation on my leadership, and that gets analytically synthesized and it's debriefed with a coach. So we'll be trialing this leadership vital signs that's offered by a company called 6 Seconds. So more to come on that. I'm excited to also announce a work group that is being launched in the department that will focus on developing DOS retirement toolkit. So it turns out many of the senior leaders and some mid-career leaders are thinking about their future. So the university offers lots of rich resources in retirement, but it became clear that surgeons may need also additional unique consideration in preparing for retirement. So Doctors Calhoun, Langdale, Bulger, along with Susan Marks and Judith Rapp and myself, will be meeting for the first time this Friday or next Friday. I am personally excited about the Enneagram. Has anyone heard of the Enneagram in the room? Residents, have you? Yes, many of you. Oh, good. So this is not a simple personality test. It's actually very complex, a map of human motivations. It displays to us why we do what we do. What is our average self? What's our best self? What's our worst self? Given my map, how do I interact with others who also bring an equally complex map? So thanks to Dr. Wood, we are piloting this with 20 individuals in the department, and we're considering how this can be integrated into ongoing coaching. Lastly, this is how you make an appointment. So you can go to the site or email me directly, and then you can select either the 30-minute spot coaching or 60 minutes. If you have any questions, hopefully we'll have some time to answer your questions. Let me transition to the heart of today's talk. And my disclaimer is this talk has nothing to do with research. It is based on an empirical observation of myself and about others, mostly you. And so I borrowed this concept of empirical observation from this author of the book on emotional education, which I highly recommend. It's authored by Elaine de Botton. And I learned, that's the whole message today, is I learned that everyday life is just a rich arena for learning the skills for navigating conflict. Let me start here. A box. If you look at my resume, there is a period of 1 year where I transferred from one department to another in the medical school. None involved surgery. And I didn't make the move for better pay or better prospects. It was a desperate, desperate escape out of an unsustainable and intolerable and very painful workplace situation. So in this box, I carried the emails and all the documentations that told the story. There was a conflict with a colleague, a very close colleague, rupture in the relationship, trust lost in the leadership, 18 months, 18 months of mediations, up and down the university system, and ultimately an investigation. Lawyers were involved. I had to have two therapists who helped me wake up every morning and get to work. And against the advisement of going on a medical leave, I went to work every single day, but I couldn't do it alone. And I want to stress this. Many of the situations we deal with, it's beyond our capacity. We need help. So every time I try to go through the box of content later, I was spooked all over again, and the words on the paper just scorched my heart. So I would just slam the lid shut. And I just carried it all over with me. Then I started teaching conflict management across UW Medicine, and something began to bother me. So I was publicly telling people every conflict can teach us something new about myself, about others, about an issue. That's what I was telling other people. But I myself was avoiding the opportunity to learn something from that event. So it actually 12 years later, I was able to open the box again. And I went through every single piece of paper without getting haunted all over. And looking back, I think that was a seed of this idea for Take Two. It's a return. It's a second look, revisiting, but with a different question. So at the center of the question was the truth I believed at that time, which was I was a victim and everyone else was a villain. That was my story. I believed in it for over a decade. So I asked different questions as I went through the box. So what other stories can I tell about that event? What role did you play, Sara Kim, in it? Where did I dig in? And where did I become so fixated? So with every question, it is not a blaming. It's actually an inquiry. With the distance, physical distance, time distance, and emotional distance, it's a return and re-looking at it. And at the end, I was able to shift the narrative from that simple victim-villain story to a completely different story. The story that included shared harm. Many people suffered out of this, not just me. There were multiple levels of missed opportunities to de-escalate it much sooner. Didn't have to take 18 months of so many people's lives. Yes, many, including myself, escalated. That's a very different story than the original Genesis story. I'm the victim. So this got me thinking more about take one and take two. How many of you would say your first reaction in the heat of conflict, you can maintain composure, you say the right thing? My take one is pretty good. How many? Yes, I believe you that yes. People whom I expect would raise their hands, raising their hands. And they're my teachers in many ways. That's not me. My take one tends to be, it's very instinctual. It's habitual, unfiltered, emotionally charged. Always, how dare you, is on the tip of my tongue, even now. So for people like me, what I need to do is, okay, making my take one impeccable, I may achieve that goal in my lifetime. But until then, I will be better at my take two skill. It's intentional. I have to take a pause. In the moment, if I can take the pause, that's great. But if not, on a later date, I don't throw away anything. I have to reflect. And if the situation allows, and with courage, I may ask for a second conversation. And those second conversations have been very powerful. I also notice when I'm in the take one mode, I issue verdicts. You are wrong. I'm absolutely right. Take two is about possibilities. That's what I'm finding out. It's asking, what if? What if? How else can I look at this? It's that inquiry. I just want to say thank you to people in the room, especially this corner of the residents for nodding and smiling. You're my cheerleaders. So you may think with this insight, I'm doing great in conflict management, and I was proud of it. I'm gaining skills and deepening my insight until I had an ant outbreak at home. I don't like ants. So this pest control company, United Pest Solution, came, and I remember later in the aftermath that they did tell me the product we put down, it's actually going to make things worse because the ants all have to come inside and take the bait and go to their colony. And, once the queen ant digests the bait, then the whole colony dies out or something. And there was very scientific explanation. So, but I could not tolerate the few days when the Fremont ants all came to my house to party. I mean, in the morning, I'll wake up and I'll see a corner of the kitchen floor like moving. It was just swarms of ants. So I completely lost it. There was no take two skills to just come along. So I do not recall what I said over the phone to whoever answered the phone at that company. And it pains me having to read the email I received from the president. Dear Ms. Kim, there are times, although not often, when a customer demonstrates through their actions that they don't necessarily fit well with the protocols and services of our company. Along with the constant complaints, it has now come to my attention that you have called other pest control companies and complained about our work on your behalf. You should know that the pest control community is a close one, and we speak often. Well, who knew? By your actions, you have demonstrated that our working together is no longer feasible. Therefore, I'll let the office staff know that we'll no longer be offering services at your home. I wish you well as you seek pest control somewhere else. I immediately dismissed it. I'm like, you guys are not Italian gourmet food catering. I mean, I just dismiss it out of hand. And then I had to engage another company and the problem was resolved. But there was something about this email that kept calling me back. So I read it over and over again and I started blushing. I asked myself, what on earth have I done? What would I have said for the president to take time to write this email? But this is a best practice email on how to give somebody feedback. It's specific. I thought it was very respectful. He actually framed the language in a way I could receive down the road. And so I saved this. I'm writing a book, and this is going to be printed in its entirety. 5 years later, I called the company to offer my take two apology. And the person who answered the phone said, the president moved on to another industry. And my dear friend said, well, what do you expect with customers like you? They can't last in their job. But this is why I know life is an arena for learning from many strangers. And that takes me to this take two framework. So this framework is more elaborate. It's constantly evolving. What I'm bringing is a snapshot of some of the key points. And I'd love to hear what you think of this. So I'll go through explore, experiment, and embody. But the goal is this. The goal of Take Two is for us to develop language. When I say language, it's not just words. It's a language, it's emotional language for detecting emotional cues in me and others. the bodily signals in me and others. It's a holistic, vast language. We need all of this to marshal in the heat of the conflict moment. But if we can't handle the moment in an ideal way, then we must do a second look. And as I mentioned, the second look must also involve sometimes a second conversation if the relationship remains fractured. So let me start with explore. And when I think of explore, I'm thinking about going inwardly, but with curiosity, tons of compassion. This is not to put me on a witness stand. This is about asking myself, how are you wired? Who are you, Sara Kim, in there? So how do I do that? I can recall to mind some of the feedback I received from family, friends, and bosses, and colleagues, and direct reports, and HR. However, what I found more helpful was to capture my real-time thoughts in the moment. So during COVID, as many of you, I was on many Zoom meetings. I had a stack of Post-it notes. And every time I wanted to butt in, interrupt, overtalk, disagree, I just wrote down the thoughts. I didn't actualize those thoughts. I just wrote them down, one thought on one Post-it note. And I collected them over 3 months. And then one day I took out the heap of Post-it notes and I cataloged them for some thematic clustering. And then there was a clear pattern that emerged. And to put it simply, the pattern that defined my behavior was when I don't get my way, I tend to act out. If my interest is going to be compromised, I fire up. When others say, hold on a minute, can we think about this? I would dismiss it because it got in the way of achieving my goal. And for some reason, it was very powerful. Although I think my parents had told me this since I was young, but there was something about doing this exercise. Now I can own it because I created the pattern and I named it. However, recognizing the pattern is one thing. How do I reverse engineer my behavior? I took classes, read lots of books. But one thing that has been, at least for me, powerful is to watch and learn from other people. And Ryan, whom I met at my gym, was such a teacher. So I didn't know his name was Ryan initially. He was on the treadmill next to me. His phone rings. He answers loudly, hello? No, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I'll be home in 30 minutes. And so I thought, hey, buddy, there's a sign that says cell phones are prohibited. And so I was toying around with this idea, should I just cue him? And then a gentleman in front of Ryan turned around and said, no cell phone here. He just yelled. So then I'm like, wow, how is Ryan going to react? Ryan said almost immediately, it's just my kid. And then he paused and he said, thanks for your understanding. Wow, that's powerful because I wouldn't have behaved that way. Well, shortly afterwards, the gentleman who yelled gets off the treadmill, walks over to Ryan and whispers something into his ear. So I was too curious. So I get off my treadmill, I walk over and I introduce myself. And I said, I couldn't help but notice what happened between the two of you. What did that gentleman say? Ryan said, the man said, you're doing the right thing as a parent. I heard you said a clear boundary. So I said, Ryan, you immediately said, it's my kid. Thanks for your understanding. How do you do it? Can you teach me? He goes, I have 2 young daughters. We're teaching them not to excessively apologize. So when I got called out for using the cell phone, immediately I wanted to apologize. In the moment, I thought, you know what? I need to do something what I'm teaching my daughters. That's when he found the words. Isn't that, I don't know, to me, this is really inspiring. So I, ask him, can I use your name and story in talks? And that's how I connect with strangers. But turns out there are multiple individuals in our department who are also on the journey of self-exploration. And you're about to see quotes from many colleagues who generously, again, gave their permission for me to use their quotes anonymously. One attending said, a resident said, when there's space to reflect on my behavior and reactions, I'm able to notice the patterns regarding my mindset and fully metabolize those insights. Isn't that powerful? An attending says, I know when I snap to my ego. I know only later. I don't see it in the moment, but this attending can see it and steer it. Another attending, now I see there are two parts in me, one up to the age of 24, the other who entered surgery. The two aren't always in harmony. And I thought it was so powerful. A staff member said, my yes to others is like planting a flag, which becomes a destination I have to run to. Soon, self-doubt, worry, and regret set in for having said yes too soon and too firmly. I identify with this. Sometimes I will say an easy yes to please and to perform, only to bear the brunt of all the work. An attending said this to me in person. Sometimes I wonder whether I know myself. And a statement like this can only come from somebody who has humility, somebody who can actually question, do I really know myself? Right, so let's move to experiment. So exploring it's a journey inward. Experiment is all about habit building and putting that habit to practice. So I was really excited to come upon a news article last year about Kevin Wong, who is a second-year undergraduate student at Brigham Young University. And apparently origami folding is it's a science. It's apparently a discipline. So the reason why Kevin Wong made the news is because he took this hexagon and through the intricacy of these creases and the way this two-dimensional flat entity is folded, he created something called a bloom effect. And apparently this is breaking news in the origami world. The real scientific application is in astrophysics. So if those of you who follow James Webb telescope, how did they shoot up that massive telescope and opened up all the golden mirrors that's now shooting down the photos? It's origami technology. Why do I use this as part of experiment? So to build a new habit, we have to take one form, in this case, a flat hexagon, and give life into a different form, like a 3D bloom effect. It's generative, it's creative, it is something I consider to be playful. So I use this for managing my biases. So again, this is about what I notice in real time. So I will capture my judgmental perception. Then I turn that perception into a testable question. So if I think somebody's selfish, I give it a makeover and ask myself, well, how can I confirm her selfishness? I put my brain to work. Then I'll have to gather information. And I will revisit invariably my initial perception and change my behavior. I'm going to tell a quick story, and forgive me if you heard this story before. During COVID, so this was at the height of COVID, in my neighborhood, Asian women were actually chased down and abused verbally and physically attacked for having caused COVID. And so I was born here, and for the first time living on the US soil, I thought twice about going outside. So I didn't go outside for two days. I was scared actually for my physical safety. But fridge is getting empty, and so I went to Fred Meyer. So I'm in the cashier line. And because of the mindset I was in, what I noticed right away is a white cashier bantering and laughing with three white customers in front of me. And we're all masked. My turn. I walk up to the cashier. She doesn't even look up. She doesn't say hello. So immediately I'm thinking, here is a racist cashier, I thought. My past self would have stood there stewing. And I would have snatched my grocery bag and stomp out of it and say, I'll never shop here again. That's how I would have showed up. But at the height of COVID, I was thinking about this. How can I be generative and creative? So she is a racist is a testable question, short of asking her, excuse me, your demeanor suggests you may be racist. Do you confirm? So when I put myself in that researcher mode, her name tag came into my view. Up to that point, I never noticed people wearing name tags. So I said, Nancy, how are you doing? First question. Nancy said, I am so tired. She doesn't look up. So I said, when does your shift end? She says, in 30 minutes. So at this point, I'm excited because the racist is talking to me. And I said, what are you going to do when you go home? She said, well, I'm going to grab dinner, watch TV, and put my feet on the coffee table. Wow, that's a lot of information to test my hypothesis. When I mentioned this to a group of audience, one guy raised his hand and said, well, so you had an exhausted racist in front of you. But at this point, whether she was racist was secondary. So I grabbed the bag, and this is exactly how I said what I said. Nancy, enjoy your evening. You deserve it. Remember the language, not just the words. It's my body, it's the emotional cues. I pumped everything in it. Nancy looked up for the first time. Our eyes met, just maybe 3-4 seconds. And I'll never, never forget the crinkles around her eyes from smiling, floating above the rim of the mask. And it felt like, so I'm a practicing Catholic, so it felt like in that moment, it was a form of a communion with somebody just 5 minutes ago I had determined to be possibly a racist. I walked out and I told myself, you will always try to experiment when your harsh judgment kicks in. Let me tell you a story from a stranger before I move to other departmental voices. So this was an Uber driver. And I always asked him, are passengers usually kind to you? And they're eager to talk. And they will all say, this is empirical data actually, because I've tried this throughout the country. They'll say 99% of the passengers are kind. But I remember that one special passenger, they always have a story. Well, for this Uber driver, his story was about 3 women who got into his car. He's from Ethiopia. One woman in the passenger seat up front told him, go back to your country. So he said he has a lifelong practice. Whenever he's in a heat of a moment like that, he thinks of 3 ways to respond, and he chooses the best respond. That's what he moves forward with. So because he's so practiced, he was able to come up with 3 options immediately. What he ended up telling them was, if I go back to my country, who will drive you around? Is what he said. And apparently the passenger said, you have a good point, and left him alone. Now, at this point, I am so angry listening to this in the back seat. I say, that is not right. You should have just told him to get out of the car. He said, no, that's not my focus. My focus is to think of 3 options and say the best thing. I don't get emotional, he said. Said, what is your name? His name is Arabic, Abdirazak. And he said, it means servant of the provider. These are my teachers. I can't learn this from elsewhere. I don't learn these things from my priests. I learned this from total strangers. Only when I go up to them and say, "Excuse me, I noticed X. Can you teach me what you do?" Well, turns out there are many departmental members who also are in the space of experimenting. So one attending said, "I receive feedback that my words can be harsh. I'm now getting better at making my first opening soft and warm. This feels like a form of offering. Now I'm working on my second and third offering." And all of these, I actually heard these in person. And when I heard this remark, it was so powerful because a person could have dismissed the feedback that your word is harsh. So the person could have said, "Okay, I'll be better," but now thinks of offering. It's very poetic. This is in over 2 slides. So an attending said, "I used to think teaching residents in the OR was time consuming. Is there a way to teach efficiently and at the same time meaningfully? I started emailing residents before cases. How many of these operations have you seen? What incisional approaches were used? What components of the operation did you participate in and complete on your own? What do you want to get out of this case? How can I help you achieve your goal?" And so the attending would email residents before cases and started asking the residents, "Is this helpful?" And unanimously, the residents said yes. I recently Zoomed with this attending to seek permission to use the quote, and the person is continuing this practice. So I asked him, "You were worried about time spent teaching residents. Where do you stand?" "Oh, it's now just part of my routine." That's the beauty of practice. It becomes just integrated in what we do. One attending said, "At times, I feel like saying, 'Why the crap are we doing this?' I developed the practice of pausing, shifting from judgment to curiosity, and asking, 'Help me understand.'" For some of these people, it's a lifelong journey to make a tiny shift. But once they arrive at that new destination, they don't go back. They don't get yanked back. They move forward with new practices. A staff member said, "When someone raises concerns about a colleague, I trust the good intent behind the comment, but I reserve judgment. After forming my own firsthand view, I circle back to acknowledge the concerns and share the strength I have observed." Don't we want this colleague on our side? If this colleague hears anything negative about me, they don't just trust it. They will seek to have direct interactions with me, find out what my strengths are, and go back to the reporter and say, "You know what? I saw some of your concerns you have on Sarah, but I also saw these positive attributes. Wow, these colleagues are in our midst." One attending said, "After trial and error, I developed an approach to having difficult conversations. I spend the first 5 minutes developing goodwill, meaning building rapport. Listen first once the conversation starts instead of talking first. Ask questions, and then look for common interests and concerns." And I happen to know this individual who is very skilled and sophisticated in conflict management, and therefore is a teacher in our midst. So let me transition to the last segment, embody. So when I think of embody, I'm thinking about how to have my body, how to give my body an opportunity to have a say. So I use embodiment for really difficult conflict that had left me emotionally distraught. We know emotions are the properties of our body. They're not the product of our intellect. And some of the emotional distress, they are beyond words. I don't have words for them. And yet we have to find the words. Where do we find the words? In our body. How do we do that? So we have to take the necessary time. You may have such emotional distress you're carrying in your heart. So the goal is we have to find the words that match the emotion so that we can express it to the person who might have caused the difficulty in my life. You may reach a point where carrying this burden is unsustainable, and only having a restorative conversation is the path forward. Now, this is my own tried and true method. You will have your own method. But when I'm sitting with a difficult situation, I think about WAIT. So these are just my acronyms. WAIT. So I like the word witness. So I may be in a state of numb, or I may be in a state of rage. It's hard to differentiate what's going on in me. So I put myself outside of me as a witness. Turns out that's the highest form of emotional intelligence, is to be able to set yourself apart from you and watch yourself. So I witness the feelings. How are you feeling, Sarah? I'm just so mad. A for accessing. Where are you feeling that in your body? Sometimes it's the tightness in my chest or heat in the belly. Or often for me, it actually turns into this tender bruise that's somewhere lodged in my lower quadrant. Just there whenever I think about that difficult situation. Then I for identify and naming it. There's a common say that says, you name it to tame it. That's out of the emotional intelligence world. You name it to tame it. Often for me, the situation presents itself as pure anger. But when I take the time and I access where it lives in my body, it's not always anger. It can be sadness, often profound disappointment for promises broken, for mistreatment in public, and other sources. So once I name it, then I get to work. I have to come up with the script. It's a tellable script, something crisp. But my job is to come up with the script that I can deliver to the person who's involved in the situation. And that script has to meet three conditions. It needs to be heard, held, and honored by that person. If my script pushes them away from me or it causes them to leave the table, then my script hasn't done its work. That's why it takes time. As it did when I had to develop this script for my college friend, Lisa. 2023 September, I had a milestone birthday, and a friend hosted a party for me, 30 people invited. So this was at the tail end of COVID, but 2 days before the party, the host emailed me and said, Sarah, we need to have every person come tested negative for COVID because of our elderly mother-in-law. So an email went out to everyone. Immediately, I get a text message from Lisa, best friend from my college, who lives on Camino Island. We're not coming to the party, it said. Coercing people to take COVID test is an affront to my spiritual and physical autonomy. And the text message ended with, happy birthday, Sarah. And I was livid. I was livid because she had committed to bring beer to the party. So because I was in a high planning mode, my first thought was, well, who's going to bring beer? You said you had a beautiful container. You were going to bring ice. And that's where my mind went first. And then after 24 hours, the rage just pumped in. And she made it worse in a way because she kept texting me like, hope the planning is going well. And so I could not even email her back or text her back. Well, party happened, and I could not resuscitate that friendship for 8 whole months. I thought actually I was done with her. That's how angry I was. But as a result of going through WAIT, I remember thinking, yes, you're angry, but boy, weren't you sad that Lisa and her husband weren't there. They know you so well. They would have brightened the scene. You're missing that. You're grieving for that. That was my true emotion. That's when I got to work. I think I wrote about 10 different scripts. What can I deliver to Lisa that can be heard, held, and honored? And when I landed at the right script, I just knew it. I practiced it out loud, and I was ready. So I asked whether she could have dinner with me. Thankfully, she came and met me halfway. So after some bantering, we talked about the party, and I said, Lisa, I wish your love for me as a friend had triumphed over your principle. That was an 8 months labor. Lisa said, say it again. So I said, Lisa, I wish your love for me as a friend had triumphed over your principle. She, in all, asked me to repeat it 3 times. Every time I repeated it, I had a different emotional reaction, and instinctively I knew I was healed, and so was the relationship. And we're still friends. She's a very dear friend, an important figure in my life. It's hard. Somebody asked me in a session like this, okay, I'm the one who is harmed. Now you want me to do all the labor. And not only that, I have to package it in a way the other person can kind of hold and make it super tender and safe for them. I'm out. Then I'll ask them, well, think about the energy portion here. What is costing more energy? Holding the grief and the gripe, or channeling it to healing? That's why I do it. Energy conservation is what I try to do. Therefore, my script is crisp. I don't go into all the details. Fear never came up in the conversation. You just throw out all the secondary, unnecessary bits. You work with the egg yolk. And I want to, let's see. I'm going to transition to the last cluster of quotes. So the individuals you're going to meet, they get it. They know how important it is to connect with their body. That's the reservoir of the words for us to work with our emotions. I remind myself that anger tingling in the back of my head is best served cold. I practice my cooling process. I talk to myself to connect with my body. I breathe 3 in, hold for 3 seconds, 3 out. This shifts from perseverating to refreshing my attention. Soon the root of the issue emerges. This is about respect. I'm disrespected. Then this attending actually writes it down physically, not typing on the computer. The physical act of writing connects me with my body. It's so powerful, and it is so true. One resident said, after much introspection, it became clear I needed to laugh more. This helped me see the light-hearted side of the issues that had been weighing down on me. It was just so gorgeous. The resident met me over a difficult issue. And then maybe a month later, this was a text message. One attending said, when I sleep well, eat, and am relaxed, I'm more likely to say less and ask more questions. When I'm stressed, I tend to overtalk and talk over others. This person has a connection with the body. Resident says, when things are hard, I remember my faith and tell myself there's a reason for this difficulty. It helps me remain calm. When I don't know what to do, I turn to prayer. Any act of tapping into resources outside of ourselves, it's also a form of embodiment. And the last quote is from another resident. I had a very difficult exchange with an attending and went home feeling crushed. A few days later, I asked to speak with them. That conversation left me feeling restored. We can imagine the sheer courage this resident must have had and felt the relationship was restored, but also kudos to the attending, whoever you are, to have met the resident in the moment of vulnerability. Let me bring the talk to a closure by returning to where I started the box. Do you right now have a box that contains unresolved conflict, emotionally challenging situation that you're carrying in your heart? And in my experience, when I wrestle with the conflict long enough, it actually whispers back something to me, a new insight, a new question, a new invitation. But I want to stress sometimes we have to do this work not alone, but with maybe trusted family members, colleagues, professionals, and sometimes a coach as well. I'm going to end with a quote I received from an attending. When the light goes out in the lighthouse, one has to look to the stars. When the storm gets fierce, one has to remember the piles of rocks on the bottom. Actually heard this in person, and I remember feeling so inspired. And I use this. So when I'm in a dire and desperate situation, I know there's something in me, like that capacity for take two, that's going to shore me up and it'll nudge me to move out of the past into the future. I would like to thank the 16 residents, attendings, and staff for allowing me to use their quote, and therefore, without their remarks, this talk would not stand. Thank you so much for your attention and support. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Question for you've given a lot of good advice on how to reflect on one's own emotions around a situation. I'm curious when you are on the other side of the equation, so you're working with someone who's defensive or playing victim or sort of having the coming in hot or having these emotions and you're trying to quell the situation, what sort of the reverse advice might be that you have?
Yeah, it's an important question. Thank you. Well, whenever I see somebody's reactivity and defensiveness, immediately I'm thinking it's about their safety. Something is unsafe. But I can't go on assuming what is missing for the person. So I have to ask. I always pause. I may say, I'm feeling a little bit of tension here. I want to check in. How are you experiencing our conversation? So I have to gather information from them. I may ask them, what one thing must I know about this situation from your perspective? What one request might you have? So I just go into that information gathering mode. The worst thing I have learned through trial and error is to assume what I think the person is feeling. I mean, once I got yelled at by just saying, "You seem angry." And the person actually yelled back, "I am not angry." So, so again, the person being defensive, partially it's my perception. It's also something is true, but there's interpretation too. So, what I'll try to do in the moment is to try to bridge the gap of interpretation by inviting remarks. Now, sometimes I may ask, do you need a break? Would you like a break? Should we reschedule? So, I'll use the benefit of time if you can actually use time in that manner. Now, if it's under pressure, acute situation, just what one thing? That's my to go usually, and just assess further where they are. Also, one last thing, we don't have to resolve everything in one conversation. I learned that belatedly. I was trying to cram in everything and bring everything to a tidy closure. Sometimes some conversations need some time and retrial, reconnection, re-engagement. What's coming up for you now? Yeah.
That's what you're doing from your side, but it would be, and we can't necessarily make this happen. It would be lovely if the person on the other side heard this talk and you would have faith that they would be able to go home and
Yeah.
work through these issues so
Yes.
you both come back
I see. Thank you
able
for
to chat,
clarifying.
whereas if you're
Yeah.
just
Yeah, and that is the number one question I get from the audience. I'm willing to do the work, they say. But the colleague, the trainee, they show up the way they are. Why do I have to do all the labor? Well, I found peace. I found peace when I gave up on reforming others. I just have to do the work given the situation in that time. That's what I try to do. I know it's frustrating, but every trial, whether I resolve the matter or not, I'm actually strengthening my skill. And then another person, another situation that comes along in my path, that person, that situation is going to benefit from my skill. So I don't think about that moment alone, one episode alone. I think about an arc just to get me to a place of peace. And there are lots of losses, lots of fumbles along the way, and disappointments. But thank you. It's a gorgeous question. Dr. Wood.
Just as a heads up, it's 7:31. So Dr. Wood has the floor. I know, but just real quick here.
So I get to ask you a last question. You're going to let me, Dr. Inaba. Okay. So I want to start just by saying thank you to the faculty that are here in person and here in solidarity with the residents that are here in person. I really appreciate you being here. I think it's great for us to see each other in three dimensions and to be here for Dr. Kim's talk. And Dr. Kim, just thank you. I want to acknowledge vulnerability that you displayed in presenting to us the stories, both humorous and enlightening. I'm worried a little about your anger, and I'm going to be more careful around you because that's something I hadn't seen, and I'll be careful. But I just want to say thank you, not just for the talk, but what you are giving us in the department, because you've been providing so much important support for our faculty, for our trainees, and for our staff. I hear from them how valuable you are and how much the words like that you gave today, but words that you give on one-on-one to people, how helpful that is. And that's what the vision you and I had in taking on this role of creating strength in the people that we have and community and a culture of psychological safety and a skill of being able to navigate these relationships more effectively. And you are helping us do it. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.